Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about the intense 2-week sprint of discovery that Judge Paula Zinnes has ordered in the Abrego Garcia case. She had a hearing yesterday, and it's basically she was no nonsense. The administration and the same lawyer who's been there and made some combined certain brazen arguments with complete withholding of any of the information she's asked for. That's been the same thing day in, day out in these basically useless reports that she's ordered them to file every day. And she's really putting her foot down and said, look, the plaintiffs have asked for expedited discovery, and I am giving it to them. And first, the point of the discovery is aimed completely at the non-compliance of the United States. And what have you, the order was to undertake actions to facilitate the release from custody of Abrego Garcia. The U.S. has been playing these games, essentially trying to construe facilitate as do nothing at all. They fastened on effectuate, a term that she also used, and the Supreme Court said she should explain a little more, but she's not even thinking about that. She, after the hearing, issued an order and said facilitate, make things easier and do stuff, lift a finger, and you, United States, have done nothing at all as best as the record can tell. So this is, first, 2 weeks of declarations like signed statements under penalty of perjury and document productions, emails and the like, and potential testimony. Now, at every turn, the U.S. is going to try to say, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to even produce the information, but she is on strong ground and they are on weak ground, other than the ultimate ground of just saying, sorry, we're not complying, come and get us, do your worst. In other words, precipitating a full-on constitutional crisis by just ignoring the courts. But she's put it in terms of discovery, and it's a really smart move, because it's very rare for a higher court. The U.S. is going to call emergency 5 times a day, but higher courts very rarely actually interrupt discovery and say, the idea is do the discovery and then we'll see if it's relevant or whatever. Now, if the proceedings before Judge Boasberg are an indication, they'll try to say something like the mere provision of the information she is asking for, even if they make a big deal about it being a state secret, she'll say, okay, just show it to me in chambers. That happens all the time, as indeed it does. But they'll try to say something like the mere provision will make our allies and other people less secure in giving us information and the like. A pretty ironic claim coming from the Trump administration. But the main thing is, I don't see that flying in the context of this 2-week discovery. They're going to bring it up potentially to a court of appeal and the Supreme Court. And the law is pretty clear. I've got a Substack today that lays it out. But the basic point is, even if you think that there's some state secret involved, even if you think there's a foreign policy prerogative, it doesn't mean that you get to just clam up and say nothing to the court. So there are cases in the U.S. Supreme Court and in the Fourth Circuit, the court that is just above Judge Zinnes, that make it clear, okay, you got to defer heavily, potentially, to the United States in certain foreign policy settings, but they've got to substantiate it. The judiciary doesn't abdicate its role of deciding whether the privilege that they're asserting is actually solid or not. And it is not absolute. We know that from United States versus Nixon and other cases. You can't just say we'll never let you even. We won't say word one. Courts have to decide. Of course, one of the things courts decide when they think about privileges, what's on the other side. So the U.S. might be saying, here's the question, Mr. Administration, did you even ask El Salvador to facilitate the release from custody of Brego Garcia? We're not saying why not. Well, it's a big secret. Why exactly? And she'll get those questions. And what's on the other side? We got to always remember this. And so far the courts have. It's the, nightmarish, Kafkaesque is the word that's being thrown around a lot now, but the sort of ultimate transgression of law and constitutional and liberty. Someone has been who had no business being there, has been swept away and is in a hellhole from which he might never emerge, and he has no business being there. And there's over the last couple days, the administration, including this tawdry performance between Bukele and Trump in the Oval Office on Monday, has been like kind of chuffed about it, right? They've been, we fooled them. We stuck them in El Salvador, and now it's a no man, no constitution zone, basically. And so courts will, in deciding whether or not to accept some claim of, we won't tell you because that's a matter of foreign policy, you weigh what's on the other side. So to me, in the Boasberg case, Boasberg to show this isn't even classified information that you're trying to withhold. And there's not a single case, is there, United States, and they couldn't come up with one, where there's been a state secret privilege claim sustained when it's not even classified privilege. But again, even if it were, it's no reason not to have a judge review it. So we're talking about 2 weeks, and she did two big things yesterday in the hearing. First, she just swept away. She's obviously irate at their complete ignoring of contempt for her orders. But rather than give them a big tongue wagging, she just said, we're not talking about that now. Constitutional violation, it's decided. Your obligation to facilitate it's decided. This is just discovery. So she's given them nothing to try to pin a emergency appeal on, except now the discovery that's going to be ensuing right away. And she also made clear, buckle up and get ready for a real ride here, because we're talking about 2 weeks of intense discovery, no vacations, don't ask about it. I'll be here in the courtroom on the weekend in case you have anything to try to decide. So boom, really sort of treating them a little bit like, a recalcitrant school child. You're staying here and you're going to do what the law requires you to do in terms of discovery. And that's the kind of obligation. It's pretty rare for a higher court to reach way down and say, oh no, you shouldn't propound this interrogatory or whatever. Definitely the normal practice would be to do the discovery. Then if there's then the court will rule. And the court here is going to rule, are they in contempt? What will the penalties be, etc.? Then maybe you can bring it up. They'll try to say sometime in these 2 weeks, oh no, we can't even answer these questions. It's a violation of foreign policy and the like, but it ain't. Not just answering questions. That's what the law says. And, I think at this point it would be a real, pulling the rug out from under her when she's really behaved impeccably, and just a departure of where they've been so far for either the Fourth Circuit or the Supreme Court to actually sustain the administration saying we don't even have to comply with discovery. So they're in for a rough ride, I think, over the next 2 weeks, or probably more, as they try to make emergency resistance and the like. And they've got just the judge, it looks like, to do it. She is on top of things, clear-eyed, and she's obviously figured out the game plan to keep them from being able to just yank the proceedings out into the courts of appeals. And eventually, I think it's clear what she's looking at. She said, you haven't done anything yet. And she's ordered them to do things yet. They're already in contempt. And, basically, I think as long as Abrego Garcia is down there, they'll still be in contempt because it's clear, everybody understands. It would be easy if they wanted to facilitate it, to bring him home with a, little call to the president who'll do anything that Donald Trump says. And so the fact that Abrego Garcia remains down there it just follows from that's not what Trump wants to do. He wants to do the opposite, but courts have required him to do it, or the administration. And of course they have, because we're talking about remedying a horrendous constitutional violation that is completely the administration's doing, and their cavalier resistance, even kind of mocking of the court's orders to clean up their mess, is very telling, and does not sit well with the courts. Doesn't sit well with Judge Zinnes, and the choice is going to be to the United States to just right now precipitate the constitutional crisis, I think, of saying, we're not going to do what you say, or otherwise I think they're really going to have their feet to the fire for the next couple of weeks, and we're going to learn some important information that we have a pretty good sense of, namely they haven't done squat and they easily could. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.